App Academy, I actually got my bachelor's in fine arts with a concentration in modern dance. So I danced ever since I was 4 years old, and I loved it. But after I graduated college, I started looking into what else I could do for my career, and I came across software engineering, and then I started looking into how I could get into it. I started coding and teaching myself a little bit how to code, and I loved it. So then I did App Academy Bootcamp prep, and I definitely loved it very much. I loved the people around me. I loved my TAs and my little cohort mates. I guess it was like a month bootcamp prep, and I had class every evening. So I loved the environment and I loved what we were doing. So I decided to apply to App Academy, and then I got accepted, and yeah, here I am today.
All right, thanks for sharing. Jessica, you want to give a little bit of your background?
Yeah. I am a software engineer at FanDuel, the fantasy sports app. I've been here for a year and a half. I started at the very beginning of the pandemic. So I was in the office for a week, and then I've been remote ever since, which has been interesting. So that was in March, and I think I finished App Academy in November of that year. So November of 2019, I think. I'm mostly on the front end. I'm starting to pick up some back end stuff. But yeah, I mean, happy to talk about, before I was at FanDuel, I was getting my PhD in history, had no coding background, knew that I wanted to leave academia, and I kind of thought that coding might be a good way for me to mix like qualitative and quantitative ways of thinking. And I did Jumpstart, and that was all the coding experience that I had prior to enrolling at App Academy. But yeah, I've really enjoyed myself at App Academy and since.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Well, since you mentioned that, I kind of saw this question. I guess we'll go ahead and start here. A lot of people have this idea that you have to start coding really early to become a software developer. Was this true for you, and how did you discover coding? And Jessica, if you want to start with that question.
Yeah, so I did not start coding much before App Academy. I think some people in my cohort had, started coding early and been those kids who were coding at home in their spare time. I was certainly not one of those. I had absolutely no experience before other than Jumpstart, so I think it's totally unnecessary. If you were one of those kids that grew up coding, great, but I don't think it is at all necessary. I know that at my company, a lot of the people also come from bootcamp backgrounds and were not coding prior to that. So it's definitely possible to pick it up at bootcamp and then be successful at your job and beyond.
Tika, what about you?
Yes, same here. Like I said before, I actually have background in arts and dance, and I didn't even know about much about software engineering, I guess, before I kind of started looking into it. I took this one course in college, my senior year, like last semester, that was teaching mathematics, but basically that was the first time where we used software. We would just build models of different like real life systems, but that was the first time I used software and data, like interacted with data a little. So that was kind of what sparked my interest. And I realized, because I always enjoyed math and science, but I never really did anything with it. So after I graduated, I thought back about that class, and I really wanted something that would kind of bring out my analytical side as well as creative side. And then I started looking into software engineering more based off of the class that I had done. And yeah, that's kind of how I was introduced to it. And then I started looking into ways of getting into it, schools versus boot camps, and I did a lot of research about boot camps, and App Academy came up a lot, of course. So then I realized that I needed to be ready to be accepted to even these boot camps. So that's why I did the bootcamp prep. So yeah, I had no prior experience. A lot of my people in my cohort didn't have prior experience either. It was a good mix, I would say, of people with experience as well as no experience. But yeah, everyone, I think my cohort had about 60 people or so. So like a lot of people had no prior experience as well. So yeah, and everyone ended up finding jobs that I know of at least. And yeah, I don't think you need the prior experience either. Although I was one of those people that thought that I couldn't possibly get into software engineering, at this age and at this time.
Well, thanks for sharing. Let me follow up with this question. Why did you decide that App Academy was the right fit for you?
So I think just reading a lot of reviews and researching a lot. So like software engineering boot camps, App Academy had great reviews, like I said, and so I started really looking into it. I also saw that it was very intense, and I was looking for something that was going to keep me really engaged. I think it just fit my personality. I wanted a challenge. I wanted to get into it fast and just really commit to it. And so then when I decided to do the bootcamp prep, I think bootcamp prep was the reason why I really wanted to do App Academy afterwards, like the actual bootcamp, because I loved my TAs and they shared their stories with us while we were studying, and they told us about their coming jobs and their cohorts and stuff like that. And it seemed like everyone had a great experience. And I really enjoyed in the bootcamp prep, we also did pair programming, which is a big part of the actual bootcamp as well. So I really loved the pair programming aspect of it as well. So yeah, I just decided that it was going to be a great fit for me. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, of course. How about you, Jessica?
Yeah, all the reviews online were like, this place is the most intense boot camp and like the hardest, and like people work crazy hours. And I was like, great, I would like that one, please. Like, if I'm going to commit and make this radical change in my life, like I want somewhere where it's like super intense and rigorous. And I'm someone who really needs deadlines, and the idea of having tests and things like that really appealed to me, because I was like, this is really going to force me to learn. And yeah, I was like, I wanted the most competitive, intense program. I don't know if this is
Gotcha.
about me, but
Gotcha. And I got a follow-up question for you, Jessica. I'm also an ex-humanities PhD student. How have you presented your time in academia, in job interviews, on your resume, et cetera?
yeah, it's definitely an unusual background that I've taken. I would say that I do think that when I was applying for jobs, there probably were a lot of automatic rejections, just like this person doesn't have the background that we're looking for. But the jobs that I did have interviews for, I think people were really intrigued by it. And I think they liked that I had a lot of skills that maybe some engineers don't have, like research, writing, speaking. I mean, I think that you have like a whole skill set that most just pure CS software engineers don't have. So if you can kind of present that in a way, I think, and like, I just think that it helps to have an interesting story for interviewers. Most interviewers, and now I'm interview tons of candidates all day, most of whom are pretty similar and have similar resumes. So when you do come in with like a PhD or whatever, I think it can only help as long as you're in the door already. And just think about how you can translate things. Like I have a background in editing papers, and that helps me when I think about editing code. Like, how can I present something clean and readable? So, and a lot of coding is independent work, a lot of self-research, and the same thing with academia. So you can find a lot of kind of connections if you look for them.
Gotcha. Okay, question for Tika. Can you please describe your current work responsibilities? What programming languages do you use? And what topics covered by App Academy curriculum do you implement in your current job?
So my current job, I'm actually doing my onboarding process right now, so I cannot answer fully, but I know that I will be using TypeScript and React. That's kind of what we're going to be focused on, and a little bit of Storybook, which I actually use already because I had an internship right after I graduated App Academy. So I interned for a little bit on this it was just like a startup, pre-seeded startup, and I did front-end work there as well, and I used those same technologies. So we didn't learn TypeScript at App Academy, but I had already had a little experience about that. So I'm excited to kind of dive back into that. And then, sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, so what topics covered by App Academy curriculum do you implement in your current job?
So a big part of it will be React, of course. And then some testing. App Academy teaches a little bit of testing for sure, which is very useful. And I found it useful in my internship as well. TypeScript is very, very similar to JavaScript. So that'll be just easier to pick up as well. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know my entire stack just yet. I'm actually doing my dev setup tomorrow. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Jessica, how about you?
Yeah, so I also use TypeScript and React a lot. Like Tika said, we learned JavaScript and React. So that was super helpful. And Redux. Our testing is in Cypress, so that's a little bit different. And then we use a Python REST API and also GraphQL. So definitely it's helpful for me having a little bit of SQL knowledge, but I would say JavaScript and React are probably the things on the curriculum that I use the most. I haven't touched Ruby in probably 2 years now. But I think the thing about App Academy is I feel like rather than getting bogged down in the specifics of every language, it's helpful to more understand like conceptually how each language works and know how to look up questions for that language and kind of understand how all the languages and frameworks work together rather than getting really caught up on like in Ruby or something. I think now actually you guys are teaching Python. Is that right instead of?
Yeah, well, the 16 weeks still teaches Ruby. The 24 weeks teaches Python.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and it doesn't, like at my job, it doesn't really matter. Like I'm working a little bit now in Python and Java, and I had no background. I think no matter where you land up, your knowledge isn't exactly going to match your job's requirements. But as long as you have you know how to code and you know your languages really well, I think it's pretty easy, and people will give you a lot of a grace period to learn new languages.
Gotcha. So we got a question. It looks like we have a current student. What would you recommend to someone who is in App Academy right now to start working on so it'll ease the transition into the job search?
I could answer that. I would say definitely as you keep, I'm not sure what you're working on currently in the cohort, maybe projects or whatever, as you keep doing that, try to also, I would say, focus on algorithms. I think a lot of companies that I've at least experienced interviewing with do ask a lot of algorithmic questions. So I would say focus on that, as well as try to just do mock interviews as much as you can. Maybe don't start right now, but as soon as you graduate, when you have a little bit more time, mock interviewing helps a lot. Honestly, interviewing is a skill on its own, and I had to learn that the hard way. So I would say just interview as much as you can. You will have a career coach eventually, so ask them to give you mock interviews, as well as maybe reach out to your peers. There are specific websites as well that you can use to do mock interviewing. Those two would be my biggest advice, I guess, to focus on. I don't know if Jessica, you have more to add probably.
Yeah, I was a real like sneaky pants and somehow got a job without really knowing how to do algorithms. I just like got lucky. I don't recommend not learning how to do it. Just in my case, I knew that I wanted to be on the front end primarily, and I knew that I wanted kind of a mid-level company, so I wasn't really looking into the Googles of the world. But definitely, if you do want to work more full stack, or you do want to work at a Google or something like that, then definitely start learning algorithms. But if you know you want to work on the front end, like definitely at App Academy, everything is learned so quickly that after we ended, I spent probably a month just like reteaching myself JavaScript, working on small React projects. And that's what personally helped me in my job search. So I think it depends on what you're looking for. But I do highly recommend if you want to be on the front end, just maybe making a small project, reviewing what we did in your full stack project, and just like really understanding everything that you did, because people will look and ask you questions about your code. So it kind of depends what route you're going for.
Awesome. And what was the most difficult part of the course for you?
really anything abstract for me, I would say. I'm someone who needs to think pretty concretely, so anything more abstract was difficult for me. Um, and maybe I think object-oriented programming might have been, like assessment two, I think it was. I think that was the hardest part for me. Yeah.
So for me, I don't think it was a specific topic that was the hardest. I think it was the load of information that was coming my way, and then the homework at the end of the day. There's a lot of homework, at least for 16-week program, which is what I did. A lot of homework that we had, but it's very important to keep in mind that it's front loaded, and your instructors will tell you that a lot. But I was having a hard time kind of being okay with that. And so from the beginning, I kind of hurt myself trying to stay up way too late at night, and then had to wake up early in the morning, and I was kind of burning myself out. So that was the hardest part for me, to focus on just making sure that everything that I learned throughout the day, I really understood, and then being okay with like where you stand in the day. As long as you put in your 100% and like really dive into things in every detail and understand every line of code that you write every day, you will be okay. And then it's easier to also go back and like kind of keep learning after you graduate if you need to. But if you miss little things, then it's harder. Then you have to go back and make sure that, oh, what was this that I kind of missed, and kind of connect the dots. So I would say that was the biggest challenge for me, to kind of make sure that I didn't try to do all of the homework, but instead do like part of the homework maybe, but really understood everything and be okay with that. So that, yeah, I think that answers that.
Yeah, and how did you set up your schedule during the course?
Should I
Uh, yeah, go
go?
for it. That's the problem when you have two women on the panels. They're like very polite and like, no, you go. So you go.
Okay. Yeah, so class started 9 a.m. and it went on till 6 p.m. So there was not a lot of time around it. Besides, I tried to just like wake up a little bit earlier, do a little bit of a walk outside or workout or whatever to kind of get my brain started, and then just jump into the class. There's lunchtime break that we had, and then the 15-minute break like later on during the day. And then after class, I would just make sure to take like an hour at least to eat dinner, and do whatever you need to do. Kind of don't think about coding maybe if you can, and then right back to just homework and whatever I needed to work on. And that went on until at least 11 p.m. and then to bed, and same thing the next day. And then weekends were also pretty, I guess, study heavy, because like the assessments that Jessica mentioned before, those happen pretty much every week. So you have to make sure to practice for those, as well as make sure that you're on top of everything that you just learned throughout the week. So I definitely found myself studying for the assessments, as well as kind of reviewing things that I had learned, and then also prepping for the next week's material. So yeah, I think every day was pretty much the same, including the weekends.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it helped that we were in person, and to be surrounded by people who are also doing the exact same thing. So yeah, the full day I was at App Academy, and then going home, I maybe took 20 minutes for dinner and then was working straight through. It's really a sprint for the first, I guess, 6 weeks. But after that, things really do calm down. And I would come in on the weekends at least once a day, especially when there was an assessment coming up. And it really helped to have study buddies in the cohort. Everyone is in the same boat as you are, and there's really nothing as bonding as sort of an intense fear. And so I think just having that group around you really disciplines you. And so I knew like, okay, everyone else is coming in on Saturday at 10. I'm also going to come in Saturday at 10. And so most of the weekends I was also working the full day. Usually I would take off Friday night just because I needed one night to just like watch The Bachelor or something and not think about coding. But for the rest of those 6 weeks, I would say, it's pretty much coding morning through night and coming into App Academy at least one day over the weekend.
Gotcha. And a follow-up question for you, Jessica. What did you do to de-stress during the course?
So yeah, definitely watch my Friday Night Bachelor in Paradise. And then to de-stress, I mean, I honestly think that like hanging out with my cohort mates was the best. Just like venting to them about what's going on, and I think that that was my best way of de-stressing. And I still talk to a few people. Hopefully, I think it would be more if we weren't in a pandemic. But I think that was just the best way to de-stress, is just to talk to everyone else and just like have fun. And obviously, if you're in the building on a Saturday or something, you're not going to be learning the whole way through. You take breaks and, go get something to eat. So I definitely didn't see too much of the outside world for those 6 weeks, but I think just the bonding experience itself takes away a lot of the stress that's kind of inherent to the curriculum.
Tika, how about you?
Yes, I would have to agree. It was definitely just bonding with my cohort mates, even though it was over Zoom. We would actually, our instructors would let us kind of stay in the same main Zoom room for whoever wanted to. So after class, we would just stay in there, maybe like mute ourselves and turn the video off, of course, because some people were eating or whatever, and then people were doing homework. But we were like in the room if we needed each other. If we had any questions, we would just unmute ourselves and ask questions. So that was really nice. And also we would also just like kind of do Zoom rooms on our own and jump around, I guess hop around and check with each other how we were doing. So I think my cohort definitely really made a point to collaborate and stay connected. I still talk to so many of them. We still meet up on the weekends, actually. So that was definitely the best part, because everyone is in that same situation that you are, stressed and worried, and you don't know what's going to happen. And so it's definitely a great way to bond. But also, like I said before, I made sure to like take an hour walk or do some type of activity that also helps me de-stress a lot. So I also try to do that whenever I found time.
Yeah, sounds like you're pretty busy pretty much for the 4 months throughout the course. Well, Tika, I got another question for you. How was your experience pair programming? Did you feel like it was a good preparation for your work or for interviewing? And what did you do if you or your partner was having a harder time with the day's week/material?
Um, so, sorry, the first part of the question was how did I do it? How did I feel in terms of
How was your
programming?
experience with pair programming?
Oh, pair programming. Oh, that was the best experience, I think, for me in class. I actually ended up liking those pair programming days more than when I had to work by myself. Um, just because, when there's someone else there to work with you, you can bounce off ideas. You can, ask questions. They can ask questions. That's the best way to learn, I found, because sometimes I would basically try to explain something to my pair, and I would realize that I didn't actually know all the details. So then both of us would go ahead and like start Googling things and find things out together. So I think just having to explain is such a great way to also learn. So it'll happen, of course, when we are pair programming, that one person might know more than the other, or one person might feel more comfortable than the other. But that's when communication comes in. If I felt like, I understood something better, I have like a perfect example of when we learned recursion. I don't know if you guys know this at all yet, but basically it's like a little bit of a complicated topic. And I I found that I was doing okay with it, and then my pair wasn't doing so great. So, uh, it's just like slowing down, making sure that I explain things. But then there were other topics where I had no idea what was going on, and my pair did. So then they would slow down, but I would make sure to ask questions. Sometimes it can be intimidating to ask questions, because you don't want to feel like maybe that you don't know something, or you feel like you should know something that you don't. But it's very, very important, and the instructors will keep telling you to ask questions as well. But definitely you need to ask questions. Like, don't be shy. Don't feel like you should know something, because you don't. That's why you're here. You need to learn. So I think it's very important when you're pair programming. If you feel like, you know more, not that you know more, but maybe you understand the topic better, or you have a different idea that you think may be better, it's first of all, it's important to kind of see through all the ideas and bounce ideas off of each other. You might have two completely different solutions that work, and there are so many different ways to solve problems. So I think when there was like I don't know what to call this, I guess like when one person knew more than the other, it was just very important to communicate and ask questions and slow down and explain. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica?
Yeah, so I enjoyed pair programming. I don't really do it at my job. Every so often, if something is bugging me or one of the other engineers on my team, we'll do a Zoom, and every time we're like, oh, that was so fast. Like we should like always do this, because it is so much easier and faster to come up with an answer to a complicated problem when there's more than one person thinking about it. And so we have started to do it a little bit more on my team. I definitely felt a lot of insecurity pair programming, because I think that I always felt like, oh no, I'm the slow partner and I'm the partner asking questions. But I do think that a lot of people appreciated that, because I was always the one who was very shameless about asking questions to the TAs, and I have no shame with asking questions. So whether or not, so I can speak to sort of that part of being the partner who feels a little slow. I actually think that it's a good thing to be, because you make sure that you understand it, and you also make sure that your partner understands it, and they might not understand it as much as they think they do. And then very rarely I would be the partner who knew more, and in that case it was really helpful for me to try to explain things to someone and to really test how much I knew by being able to explain, because you don't really know how much you know unless you're forced to do it in practice and to tell someone else how you did it in practice. And I would say probably like 90%, 95% of my pairs were great, which is like a really high ratio, I think. And I always wrote like very nice things at our surveys every night. And I just think it tends to be like a self-selecting group of people who all do the work. Like no one's really slacking off. Everyone's trying to help each other. It's not as like competitive it is with passing the test. It's not competitive with each other. So you just like want everyone to do well. And I think it was like very supportive. And I kind of wish that we did more at my current job, because I think pair programming is always very helpful. It's nice to work on your own sometimes, but it's really nice to come back together and check in and ask questions and answer some questions too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Jessica, what were the instructors like during the course?
They were great. I had such a meltdown when I left, because I was like, I can't take my coach and like Paulina, like my former mentor, with me. Like, how am I going to do a single thing at my job? Because I feel like they both helped me straight through both my projects. They were really helpful. Like they would respond to me. I would send like, people used to make fun of me because I would send like multiple paragraph long messages on Slack over the weekend, like just like a crazy person, and they would always like respond like, first of all, calm down, and then they would respond and help me. And they helped me in a way that I think was good for me long term. Like, okay, here's how to use a debugger. And actually, I'm the only person on my team that regularly uses debuggers. And sometimes I'll Zoom with engineers who've been like doing this for 4 or 5 years, and they're like, wait, what is that you're using? Like, I've never seen that, because like they just taught us like how to debug. So I think the TAs are really great. I'm always shocked at how much they knew, considering like they were just in the program. And yeah, they're very useful to have, but like you'll be able to survive without them, I've learned.
Tika?
Yeah, I had the same experience. I loved all my instructors. They were all very helpful. I would send them messages late at night, being stressed about something, and they would respond sometimes, or maybe sometimes the next morning, but they were always very responsive. Yeah, they would hang around in the Zoom room sometimes. And then during the class, actually, if we had any questions, you were able to kind of raise your hand or hop back into the main room and ask questions, and they're of course always there to answer. I felt very supported, and I don't think I could have done it without my instructors that I had there. So yeah, I loved it.
And Tika, if a student needs extra support, like what are some different ways they can get that?
Extra support. I guess just like emailing instructors. They're very responsive. Over Slack messages is I think we use Slack more than emails, but you can definitely use both. I don't know, my instructors always responded to my Slack messages. And then in the Zoom room, if it's during class, then they just see the notification that you have a question and they just come to your room, or you jump into their room. Yeah, I can't remember if there was any other way. Sorry. But I think those were the main communication points.
Yeah, I think we had office hours, so highly recommend going to all of those. I definitely went to every one and just like ask questions. I think a lot of people feel like ashamed to ask questions, but like I can see now that the people who have the hardest time are the people who sit with their problem for like 2 days and don't tell anyone that they are having a hard time. And then all of a sudden, like it comes out that they have no idea what they're doing. It's like just ask questions, reach out. If you are struggling, go to office hours. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And Jessica, what was your career coach like?
Colin, love him. What was he like? He put up with me, which was a lot, because if you haven't been able to tell, I'm like a very anxious individual. And I think the job search lends itself to everyone turning into an anxious individual. So he was really great, really supportive. When I had my coding take home, I was like constantly like sending him questions like, can you review this? And he did. And yeah, he was just like really supportive the whole way. And we went at my pace. Like I was not ready to start the job search right after I finished. I needed a month to like go home and like relearn a lot of stuff. And he never pressured me to like, okay, you have to start now. You have to apply to 40 now. Like we really eased into it.
Tika, what about your career coach?
Yes, so I've actually had two because mine left kind of halfway through my job search. Both have been amazing. The first one was Eric, and same experience like Jessica's actually. I also felt like I needed some time to finish up my projects and kind of review things and take it slowly, and also just kind of go back and see my family because I felt like I hadn't seen anyone in 3 months. But he was very supportive, and like I said, for any mock interviews or any project questions, any technical project questions, he was there to answer. And then later on, he actually left the App Academy, and I had Jay, a different career coach. She was amazing. She would connect me to any behavioral coaches, because you can have a behavioral coach as your career coach or a technical coach. But it doesn't really matter. If you have a behavioral coach as your coach, then of course you can ask them all your behavioral questions. But if you have any technical questions, then they will connect you to somebody else that can help you out. You also have connections through them, or just from going to cohort and knowing other coaches as well. So you're not just limited to one coach really, but you have a dedicated coach that you can ask all your questions. But they're there to help you with whatever you need, any resources, any information about the companies that you're applying to, the specific, the specific process for interviewing with the company. They give you all of that information, and it's very, very helpful, kind of what to prepare for which interview and which company, as well as if you need mock interviews, and if you want a behavioral and your coach is a technical coach, then they will set you up with a behavioral coach, which is what Jay did for me for my mock behavioral interviews and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely very helpful. I reached out at any point of the day with some random questions. I reached out to her for even like just kind of reading through the emails that I was going to send an employer and making sure that it sounded okay. So like even the silly stuff, she was there to support it and approve things and stuff like that. So I felt very supported for sure.
And Tika, what was a typical day during the job search? What did that look like?
So I think it changed a lot for me. Specifically, I always made sure to definitely have like a whole week schedule set up. I would set it up like on Sunday evening. So I think it's definitely very, very important to try to stay in some type of schedule. Otherwise, you'll just get distracted, and it's hard to keep going. I definitely felt that at certain days. Sometimes some days are better than others, but it's important to try to have a plan to kind of stick to it. So after like 2 months or so, I got an internship. So my schedule depended on my internship just because we did a lot of pair programming. So I had to find times when I could meet up with other people on my team and pair program and get some feature done of the application. So I would try to like kind of talk to them in advance and then make a plan for like next 2 or 3 days at least ahead. So I would do in the morning. They recommend that you apply to all the companies early in the morning. So I tried to do that in the morning, and then try to have like my own study session, whether it was algorithms or whether I wanted to do maybe like a React tutorial or something like that, just something to kind of keep my skills sharp and keep learning. And then I would maybe meet up with my, sorry, I'm forgetting words. I would meet up with my people from my team, sorry. And then I would have also meetings and stuff like that. And then I actually started working at App Academy, so that changed my schedule as well. But the main thing is, I guess I try to keep like a similar schedule at least, or I tried to set up my schedule on a Sunday or a few days ahead, so I knew what I had to stick to. I don't know if that was very helpful, but that's what I did.
That was great. Thank you. What about you, Jessica? What a typical day in the job search look like?
Yeah, it also changed. Like I would say November, December, I was very much just unwinding. I was doing a lot of tutorials, just like relearning JavaScript, just not really applying. And then I probably started applying end of December into January. And during that time, I filled out a lot of applications. I was a hacker in residence, so I did that for a little bit, just interviewing prospective students. And I did a little bit of algorithms, and then February was when I applied to FanDuel, and each like stage was probably about a week. So that was my whole month of February, and that's pretty much all I did and thought about. But yeah, so every month was pretty different. Yeah.
And about how many applications per week would y'all submit?
So I think I was at 25, and to be honest, I would usually send a lot of like crappy quick applies just to hit that mark. But then every week I would make sure like to send, 5 to 10, depending on how good I was being, of like really good quality applications for companies that I wanted to work for, and like really taking the time to like write a great cover letter, like adjust my resume. And FanDuel is one of the places that like I really think it was my cover letter that got me hired, to be honest, because I was just like so over the top enthusiastic about them. And so I think like taking the time, like rather than trying to hit a certain mark, I know we have to, but I think it's like really helpful to think about quality, because even though people say like nobody cares about cover letters or resumes or stuff, I think like HR people do care. And it's always great to have a candidate who like actually wants to work for your company. And so taking the time to have like come up with like 5 or 10 really great applications, I think is the most helpful thing that you can do. But I think I was hitting like 25 a week.
Tika, how many would you send a week?
Yeah, I think I was also sending 25 a week. I had weeks when I sent more, or sometimes I would send less. And like I said, my coach would work with me always. I always had a reason if I didn't meet the 25 mark, because I also had an internship. And if I was busy and if I was getting traction from other companies, then maybe I didn't have to send 25 that week. But it was mostly 25 a week. And I also, like Jessica, did a lot of quick applies sometimes. But I definitely focused on doing like quality applications for those companies that I would love to work at, and writing cover letters as well, which is pretty time consuming. So I think at the end of the day, like you want to decide if you want to apply to 25, 30, 40 companies, or if you want to send out good quality applications, because there's just so much on your plate that you have to do during job search. You have to, keep your skills sharp. If you have an internship or anything like that, obviously that takes some time. You want to study different things because different companies ask for different skills, and so you can't like get bogged down with that, of course, but you still try to focus on different things. So applications is one of the main and important things, of course, because a lot of the times it's also a numbers game. But I did do a lot of quick applies, to be honest. But I did also do quality applications for the companies that I cared about. And also, sorry, one more thing, referrals. Just reaching out to people and asking for references and talking to people. I think that definitely worked for me, and just kind of connecting with people that you knew or maybe knew through the cohort and stuff like that. That's also very important, and that's also time consuming, I would say. It's not just like quick send a LinkedIn invite. Sometimes it's also sending out a message, a thought out message, or whatever it may be. So a lot of things to juggle between. But it was made to go back to the question. It was mainly like 25 applications a week or so.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And then we have time for one more question. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to incoming students? And Jessica, I'll let you start.
This is ironic because I'm like so stressed out in general, but I was like, don't be so stressed out. And it's just like when you're not going to be asked to remember small things from the curriculum later on. Learn like when something is troubling you, like start by going to Stack Overflow and Googling, and then ask someone, maybe your peer or your coworker. And then if that doesn't work, ask a TA/manager, like know how to escalate, know how to problem solve on your own. And like, don't get too freaked out and like knowing every little like Ruby nuance, because you have to pass the assessments, that's the truth. But eventually when it comes to your job, like you don't know exactly what language you're going to be working with. So don't get too stressed out about the little language nuances. Just try to like know how to code and know how, which sounds stupid, but like know how to debug, like know how to write tests, know how to use Stack Overflow. Everybody does it. So like those are, I would say, the main things to take away.
Yeah, I would say asking questions is my biggest advice. I didn't do enough of it from the beginning, and I think I definitely suffered and had to get over it halfway through or so. So asking questions ask questions to your TAs, to your instructors, to your cohort mates. A lot of questions, and yes, don't stress, which I did all the time, and I still do, I think. But it's don't get bogged down by little details. I think I'm just repeating what Jessica said, but it's true. I think try to kind of understand things in a bigger picture, and kind of go from there. Don't focus on how you didn't do like 2 or 3 or more of the homeworks that you had assigned for that night. Just make sure that you understood and you took away what you had to take away from the day, and just ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, it sounds like asking questions is kind of the big trend. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tika, Jessica, so much for your time, for answering those questions. I appreciate everybody who joined us today. I know I definitely learned a lot, and I hope all the attendees you did as well. If you do have questions about the program, if you submit an application, definitely reach out to your admissions specialist. If you are interested to get started with the course, all you got to do is submit an application. But we're going to go ahead and hop off. Again, thank you guys so much for your time. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I definitely learned a lot, and it's been great, and hope to see everyone around. And we look forward to work with you through the admissions process and adding some more students to the App Academy family.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.